A homeless girl helped an old deaf beggar, unaware he was a billionaire in disguise. What happens next shocked everyone. No one noticed the old man sitting near the bus terminal. That was the point. He sat quietly on a broken crate, head slightly lowered, hands resting on a cardboard sign that read only one word in shaky letters. Deaf! People passed him like he was air. Some laughed. Some whispered insults. Some waved their hands mockingly in front of his face, testing if he could hear them. He didn't react. And then she stopped. Her name was Lena Carter. At 19, Lena had already lived a lifetime of struggle. Homeless for over a year, she slept behind closed grocery stores, under bridges, anywhere the rain wouldn't find her first. Her clothes were mismatched and worn thin. Her sneakers had holes near the toes, but she walked like someone who still believed in tomorrow. That morning, she hadn't eaten. The last thing she owned was a half-wrapped sandwich she'd been saving since the night before. She saw the old man, thin, unshaven, ignored, and something in her chest tightened. She crouched in front of him slowly so she wouldn't scare him. He looked up, startled, his eyes sharp but tired. She smiled. He tilted his head, confused. Lena remembered her little brother before foster care separated them, how he used to read lips, how sound meant nothing but faces meant everything. So she pointed to herself and spoke clearly. Hi, I'm Lena. The old man watched her mouth carefully. Then she pointed to the sandwich, then to him. His eyes widened. He shook his head quickly, waving his hands. No, she didn't listen. She broke the sandwich in half and placed it gently into his hands. For a moment, the old man froze. Then his fingers trembled. He brought the food closer, as if afraid it might disappear. His eyes filled with something deeper than hunger, gratitude. He pressed his palm to his chest and bowed his head slightly. Around them, people noticed. A man scoffed. Why you wasting food on a beggar who can't even hear you thank him? A woman laughed. She homeless too, guess birds of the same feather. Lena heard them, she ignored them. She sat beside the old man on the curb, even though the concrete was cold. She pointed to the sky, then the buses, then the street vendors, exaggerating her mouth movements, describing the world for someone who couldn't hear it. The old man watched her like a child discovering color. He touched his ear and shook his head again. I know, Lena said softly, still exaggerating her lips. But you can still see. He smiled. A real smile. What Lena didn't know was that this was not an accident. The old man's name was Henry Blackwood. To the world, he was a billionaire industrialist, a man whose companies touched hospitals, infrastructure, and governments. A man surrounded daily by people who smiled for money, bowed for influence, and helped only when cameras were watching. But today Henry wore torn clothes, today he was deaf, today he was invisible, and today he was watching. Not her clothes, not her poverty, her heart. Henry had tested cities before, people before, humanity itself, most failed. They offered help loudly, or not at all, or only when someone else was watching. But this girl, she gave without asking, she stayed without recording. She smiled without expecting reward. When Lena stood up to leave, she hesitated. She reached into her pocket and pulled out 2 wrinkled dollar bills, her last money. She placed them gently into the old man's cup. He grabbed her wrist gently, shaking his head violently. She smiled and gently removed his hand. It's okay, she mouthed slowly. I'll be fine. That was a lie. But kindness doesn't wait for comfort. As she walked away, Henry watched her disappear into the crowd. And for the first time in years, the billionaire felt something crack inside his chest. Because this one felt different. Henry clenched his fist quietly. She doesn't know who I am, he thought. And she still chose me. What he didn't know yet was that this girl's kindness was about to collide with a truth so big, it would change her life forever. How Lena's kindness puts her in danger, and why the old deaf beggar refuses to stop watching her. Lena didn't look back as she walked away from the bus terminal. Not because she didn't care, but because caring too much had taught her how painful hope could be. The city swallowed her the way it always did. Cars rushed past. Vendors shouted prices. Life moved forward, indifferent and loud, even though the old man behind her lived in a world of silence. What Lena didn't see was Henry Blackwood slowly standing up. His movements were stiff, deliberate. Age showed in his posture, but not weakness. His sharp eyes followed her as she disappeared down the street, blending into the crowd like she'd never existed at all. Henry adjusted the small device hidden beneath his collar, the one that muted sound entirely. He had chosen deafness for a reason. When people believed you couldn't hear them, they showed their true selves. And today they had. All except her. Lena spent the afternoon doing what she always did, surviving. She helped unload boxes at a grocery store for a few dollars. She swept a barbershop floor for loose change. She ignored the hunger clawing at her stomach, telling herself she'd eat later. By sunset, her legs ached. She headed toward the abandoned parking structure where she usually slept. It wasn't safe, but it was familiar, and familiarity felt like control. As she turned the corner, a group of teenagers blocked her path. "Hey," one of them said, smirking, "you dropped something." Lena looked down instinctively. Nothing was there. The second she looked up, one of them shoved her shoulder hard. "Watch where you're going," another laughed. Her heart raced. She stepped back slowly. "I don't want trouble," she said quietly. They circled her like vultures. That's when a shadow fell across the pavement. "Enough!" The voice was calm, firm, authoritative. The boys turned. The old beggar from earlier stood there. No cardboard sign now, no hunched posture, just stillness and presence. One of the teens scoffed. "Old man, get lost, you deaf or something?" Henry didn't react. He stepped closer. Something about his eyes made them hesitate. "You should leave," he said slowly, clearly, exaggerating his mouth movements as if mocking their cruelty. The boys exchanged looks. "Creepy," one muttered. They backed away, laughing nervously as they went. Lena stood frozen. "You followed me?" she asked, confused. Henry tilted his head, then nodded. She studied him more closely now. His clothes were worn, yes, but clean. His shoes, though scuffed, were well kept. His hands were rough, but not the hands of someone who'd begged all his life. "Why?" she asked. Henry tapped his ear and shook his head again, then gestured to her heart. Lena frowned. "You mean because I helped you?" He nodded. She laughed softly. "You didn't need to follow me for that." Henry hesitated. Then he did something unexpected. He pulled out a small notepad and pen from his pocket and wrote carefully. "Not safe here." He showed it to her. Lena swallowed. "Nowhere is," Henry wrote again. "I can't help." She shook her head immediately. "I don't take money." He smiled gently and wrote, "Neither do I." Before she could respond, headlights flashed nearby. A black SUV pulled up slowly. Too clean, too expensive. Lena stiffened. Henry's expression didn't change. The back door opened. A sharply dressed man stepped out, eyes scanning the area. "Sir," the man said respectfully, placing a hand over his chest. Lena's breath caught. "Sir," Henry raised one finger slightly. The man froze. Henry turned back to Lena and wrote one last thing. "Trust me." Just for tonight. Her instincts screamed no, but exhaustion whispered yes. She hesitated only a moment, then nodded. The place Henry took her to wasn't a mansion. That would have been too obvious. It was a modest apartment, warm, clean, quiet. Food waited on the table. A blanket rested neatly on the couch. Lena stood in the doorway, overwhelmed. "This is too much," she said. Henry smiled and gestured for her to sit. She ate slowly, suspicious at first, then gratefully. Tears stung her eyes when she realized she wasn't counting bites anymore. After she finished, Henry sat across from her and removed the device from beneath his collar. Sound rushed back into the room. Lena stared. You can hear?" she whispered. Henry looked at her calmly. "Yes," he said. Her body tensed instantly. "Then why?" "Because I needed to know who helps when there's no reward," he replied. Silence fell between them. "My name is Henry," he said, "and I owe you an apology." "For what?" she asked. "For pretending to be less than I am," he said, "and for testing you without your consent." Her voice shook. "Who are you?" Henry leaned forward. "Someone who has everything," he said quietly, "and trusts almost no one." Lena stood up. "I think I should go." Henry didn't stop her. "I expected that," he said, "but before you do, there's something you should know." She paused. "Your kindness today," Henry continued, "was seen by people who don't value kindness." Her stomach tightened. "You're in danger," he said. "And it's because of me." Lena's heart pounded. "Danger from who?" she asked. Henry's eyes darkened. "The same people who would never help a homeless girl," he said quietly, "but would do anything to control her." To discover who's watching Lena and why helping a deaf beggar may have just put her life at risk. Lena didn't sleep that night. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant city noise, the soft tick of a wall clock. Every sound felt amplified because her mind wouldn't slow down. Across the room, Henry sat in a chair by the window, watching the street below like a man guarding a border only he could see. "You said I'm in danger," Lena finally whispered. "I helped you for 5 minutes. How does that turn into danger?" Henry didn't answer immediately. "Sit," he said gently. She hesitated, then sat on the edge of the couch, arms crossed tightly over her chest. "There are people," Henry began, "who believe kindness is weakness, people who profit when others are invisible." Lena scoffed softly. "Sounds like the whole world." Henry gave a faint smile. For most people, yes. For me, it's personal. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim tablet. With a few taps, he turned the screen toward her. It showed a paused video. Lena's breath caught. It was her, from earlier that day. She saw herself crouched in front of the old deaf beggar, breaking the sandwich in half, smiling like nothing else in the world mattered. "How did you get that?" she asked, her voice sharp. Henry sighed. "My security team monitors public spaces, not like this," he gestured to the screen. "This was flagged after the incident." "Incident?" Lena snapped. "I gave you food. And in doing so," Henry said quietly, "you embarrassed people who believe compassion should be bought." He swiped to another screen, men in suits, boardrooms. Faces hard with entitlement. "These are my partners," Henry said. "Or rather, they used to be." Lena looked up. "Used to?" "I stepped away from a deal this morning," Henry replied. "One that would have made us all richer at the cost of thousands of lives." Lena's stomach twisted. "What kind of deal?" Henry's voice lowered. "Housing, food distribution, disaster aid. They wanted to cut corners. Cheap labor, no accountability." "And you said no," Lena said. "Yes," she laughed bitterly. "So you pretended to be a deaf beggar to feel better about yourself?" Henry met her eyes, unflinching. "I pretended to be powerless to remember what power is supposed to protect." Silence stretched between them. "They were watching me today," Henry continued. "Not just as a test, but as leverage." Lena stood up abruptly. "Then I'm leaving. I don't want to be anyone's leverage." Henry nodded. "I expected that." He stood too, slow and careful, not blocking her path. "But if you leave," he said, "they'll approach you." Her heart skipped. "Why would they care about me?" "Because," Henry said calmly, "you're proof." "Of what?" "That kindness still exists without money," he said, "and that threatens people who sell morality." Lena laughed once, sharp and humorless. "I don't even have a phone." "That won't stop them," Henry replied. "They'll offer help, jobs, safety, and if you refuse—" He didn't finish the sentence. Lena felt cold. "I didn't ask for this," she whispered. "I know," Henry said. "That's why I'm asking now." "Ask what?" "Stay," he said simply. "Not as charity, as protection." She stared at him. "Why me?" Henry's jaw tightened. "Because you remind me of someone I failed," he said. The words landed heavy. "My sister," he continued quietly. "She was kind, gave when she had nothing. Trusted people she shouldn't have." Lena's voice softened. "What happened to her?" Henry looked away. "She disappeared," he said, "and everyone told me to move on." Lena swallowed. "So now you test homeless girls instead?" Henry flinched. "No," he said firmly. "Now I refuse to let kindness die unnoticed." A knock suddenly echoed through the apartment. Both of them froze. Henry raised a hand, signaling silence. The knock came again, calm, polite. Henry moved toward the door, peering through the security screen. Lena saw his expression change, not fear, anger. He opened the door. A woman stood outside, elegant, confident, smiling like she owned the hallway. "Mr. Blackwood," she said smoothly, "we should talk." Lena's heart raced. Henry stepped forward, blocking the doorway. "There's nothing to discuss," he replied. The woman's eyes flicked past him to Lena. Her smile widened just a little. "Oh," she said, "but there is." She held up a phone. On the screen was another video. This one closer, clearer, Lena's face, her kindness, her vulnerability. "We love stories like this," the woman said softly. "And we'd hate for yours to end badly." Henry's voice dropped to ice. "Leave now." The woman tilted her head. "Tomorrow," she said, "we make an offer to the girl." She turned to Lena. "Choose wisely," she added. "Kindness is expensive." She walked away. The door closed. Lena's knees weakened. "They're not offering help," she whispered. Henry nodded. "They're buying silence." Lena looked up at him, fear and resolve colliding in her eyes. "And if I don't sell?" Henry met her gaze. "Then," he said quietly, "they'll try to take it." Lena clenched her fists. "All I did was help someone," she said. Henry nodded grimly. "And tomorrow," he replied, "you'll have to decide if kindness is worth fighting for." The offer that could change Lena's life forever, and the choice that shocks everyone watching. Morning came quietly, almost cruel in how normal it felt. Sunlight slipped through the apartment windows, warming the floor like nothing in the world was wrong. For a moment, just one fragile moment, Lena allowed herself to pretend this was a regular day. A home, a bed, safety. Then she remembered the woman at the door, the video, the offer that was coming. Henry was already awake. He stood in the kitchen, making coffee with the same calm precision he used in boardrooms and crises alike. But Lena noticed something different now. His shoulders were tense, his jaw set. "They'll come today," he said without turning. "Midday, they like daylight, makes everything feel official." Lena sat at the table, wrapping her hands around a warm mug he placed in front of her. What exactly are they offering? She asked. Henry finally met her eyes. A contract, he said. Money, housing, education. A new identity if you want it, her breath caught. That sounds good. It's perfect, Henry replied. That's how traps work. She stared into the coffee. A year ago, she would have signed without reading. Hell, a week ago, she would have cried from gratitude. And what do they want? She asked quietly. Henry didn't hesitate. They want you to say the old deaf beggar helped you, he said. Not the other way around. They want the story softened, sanitized, controlled. Lena's hands tightened around the mug. And if I refuse, Henry leaned back in his chair. Then they'll try again, louder, harder, and if that fails, he stopped. Lena finished the sentence for him. They'll destroy me. Henry shook his head slowly. They'll try. Before she could respond, a knock came at the door. Not urgent, not threatening, polite. Henry stood. This is it. He opened the door. The same elegant woman stepped inside, accompanied by two men in tailored suits. They smiled like people who had never been told no. Miss Carter, the woman said warmly, extending a hand. I'm Victoria Hale. We represent partners who admire compassion. Lena didn't take her hand. Victoria didn't seem bothered. She sat gracefully on the couch, crossing her legs. You've been through a lot, Victoria continued. Homelessness, hunger, fear, we want to help. One of the men slid a folder across the table. Lena opened it slowly. Numbers stared back at her. More money than she had ever imagined. Her chest tightened. This is real, she asked softly. Victoria smiled. Very. Henry watched silently. All you need to do, Victoria said, is tell your story, our version. Lena looked up. Your version? Yes, Victoria replied smoothly. That the beggar inspired you, that you were helped, not the helper. A beautiful story of humility. Lena laughed once, bitter and sharp. You want to erase what actually happened? Victoria's smile thinned. We want to protect everyone involved. Lena turned to Henry. Including you? Henry's voice was calm. Especially themselves. Victoria leaned forward. Think about it, Lena. You could have a home tonight. No more sleeping in fear. No more hunger. Lena's fingers trembled as she closed the folder. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Lena stood. I won't do it, she said. Victoria blinked. Excuse me? I won't lie, Lena repeated, her voice steadier now. I helped him because it was right, not because I wanted a story. One of the men scoffed. Do you know how rare this chance is? Lena looked him straight in the eye. Do you know how rare kindness is? Victoria sighed, disappointment replacing charm. You're making a mistake, she said. Lena shook her head. No. I'm making a choice. Victoria stood. Very well, we tried generosity. She turned to Henry. This will get messy. Henry stepped forward. Then clean it up yourselves, he said coldly. Victoria paused at the door and looked back at Lena. You'll regret this, she said softly. The world isn't kind to people who don't play along. Lena met her gaze without flinching. Then maybe the world needs to change, she replied. The door closed. Silence fell. Lena's legs finally gave out and she sank into the chair. I'm scared, she admitted. Henry nodded. So am I, she looked at him. Why do I feel like I just ruined my life? Henry smiled faintly. Because you didn't sell it. Later that afternoon, Henry made calls, many calls, lawyers, journalists. People who didn't answer for just anyone, but answered for him. By evening, the city buzzed. Rumors spread. A homeless girl, a deaf beggar, a secret billionaire. Lena stood by the window, watching the lights come on across the city. I didn't think being kind would cost this much, she said quietly. Henry stood beside her. Kindness always costs, he replied. The question is who pays. Suddenly, Henry's phone rang. He answered, listened, then slowly lowered it. They've changed tactics, he said. Lena's heart sank. How? Henry looked at her, concern etched across his face. They're not coming after you anymore, he said. She exhaled. That's good, right? Henry shook his head. No, he said gravely. They're coming after the people who look like you. Lena's blood ran cold. What do you mean? She asked. Henry met her eyes. They're about to turn your kindness into a warning, he said. And stopping them will require a sacrifice neither of us is ready for. How Lena's final decision shocks the entire city, and why the billionaire's disguise was only the beginning. Lena barely slept. Henry's words from the night before echoed endlessly in her mind. They're coming after the people who look like you. By morning, the city was already buzzing. Henry stood in front of a wall of screens in his private office. News channels, social feeds, live footage from downtown. Headlines crawled across the screens like warnings. No one wanted to read. Homeless girl rejects millions, internet divided. Was the deaf beggar really a billionaire? Kindness or setup, truth under question. Lena wrapped her arms around herself. They're twisting it, she said quietly. Henry nodded. As expected. On one screen, a reporter stood in front of the bus terminal where Lena had first met Henry. Sources say the girl may have staged the encounter for attention. Lena flinched. That's not all, Henry said, his voice tightening. Look. Another screen showed security guards forcing homeless people away from storefronts. Police breaking up encampments, signs reading no loitering suddenly appearing overnight. They're punishing everyone like me, Lena whispered. Henry turned to her fully. This is how power protects itself, by making an example. Lena clenched her fists. I won't let them use my kindness as a weapon, she said. Henry studied her. What are you thinking? She took a deep breath. I want to speak, she said. Not through contracts, not through their cameras. Henry hesitated. Once you do, there's no going back, she nodded. I've never had the luxury of going back. That afternoon, Henry did something no one expected. He called a press conference. Not in a boardroom, not in a luxury hotel, but right there at the bus terminal. The same cracked pavement. The same benches. The same place Lena had given away her last sandwich. Reporters swarmed as Henry stepped forward, dressed simply, no disguise now. The world finally saw him clearly, and then they saw her. Lena walked beside him, wearing plain clothes, her posture steady despite the storm inside her chest. Cameras flashed. Microphones stretched forward. Henry raised a hand. This is not a publicity event, he said. This is accountability. The crowd fell silent. I pretended to be deaf, Henry continued. Not to manipulate, but to observe. To remember what it feels like to be ignored. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. But the real story, he said, gesturing toward Lena, is not about me. He stepped back. Lena moved forward. Her hands trembled, but her voice didn't. I didn't help him because I thought he was important, she said. I helped him because he was human. Silence. I was homeless, she continued. Hungry, invisible. And still I had enough to give. People shifted uncomfortably. I didn't ask for money. I didn't ask for fame. I didn't ask to be tested. Her eyes scanned the crowd. But now that you're all looking at me, I'm asking you to look past me. She pointed behind her toward the street. There are thousands like me, she said. Kind, quiet, struggling. And if my story becomes an excuse to hurt them, then I refuse to stay silent. A reporter shouted, What do you want then? Lena didn't hesitate. Dignity, she said. Not charity, dignity. The moment exploded. The crowd applauded. Some cried. Some lowered their cameras. By evening, the narrative shifted. Donations flooded shelters not as publicity stunts, but quietly. Policies were questioned. Corporations named and pressured, and something unexpected happened. People started helping without being asked. Weeks later, Lena sat on the steps of a small community center, not as a guest, as a worker. She helped register families for housing assistance. She listened. She translated fear into hope. Henry watched from a distance. You could have taken the money, he said softly. She smiled. I took something better. What? A voice, she replied. Henry nodded. I built my empire thinking money changed the world, he said. You proved me wrong. Lena stood, brushing dust from her jeans. So what happens now? She asked. Henry smiled faintly. Now I listen. He handed her a card, a job offer, a place to stay, no contracts, no conditions. She took it, not because she needed saving, but because she chose partnership. As Lena walked back into the building, Henry remained behind, watching the city move. He had worn the disguise to test humanity. Instead, humanity had tested him. They thought kindness was weakness. They thought a homeless girl wouldn't matter. But one small act of compassion forced an entire city to look at itself. And once the world finally saw her, it could never unsee the truth.